I thought quitting my job would be the hard part. After 2 decades of building a steady career in corporate finance, I finally walked out of that glass office with a farewell cake in one hand and a generous severance check in the other. 45, single, no kids, and for the first time in my life, I had a clean slate. I wasn't scared. I was ready. I'd earned this reset. I had plans. Take a long overdue road trip, repaint the kitchen in the little craftsman house I'd bought before. The market exploded. Maybe start that photography course I kept putting off. Simple things. Just for me. I pulled into the driveway that night, humming, relaxed. I even picked up sushi for dinner, a rare treat when I was still budgeting everything down to the dime. I walked through the door, ready to exhale and celebrate. But then I saw the folder. It was sitting on the edge of the dining table, a thick manila envelope with my name typed neatly on the front. "Hey," I called out, expecting Mark, my husband of 11 years, to come around the corner. He was in the living room, already in sweatpants, scrolling on his phone like it was any other night. "What's this?" I asked, holding up the folder. He looked up, face blank. "Oh, that's the separation agreement." My fingers went numb. "You... what?" "I had it drawn up last week," he said casually, like he was telling me the recycling needed to go, out. "Figured it was time we gave each other space. You've been on your own path lately, and I think I need to figure out mine. No hard feelings." No hard feelings. That's what he said as he handed me a legal document that dissected our marriage like it was a business merger gone bad. Property division, retirement account splits, who gets the dog, everything spelled out in neat bullet points. There was even a clause about refinancing the car loan. I couldn't speak, couldn't even blink. I just stood there, staring at the man I'd once considered my best friend, wondering when the hell we stopped being a team and turned into this. I should have yelled, should have cried, should have thrown that damn folder back in his smug face. But instead I nodded. "Fine," I said quietly. "If this is what you want, let's make it clean." I signed the papers that night. 3 days later, I packed a duffel bag, transferred my severance into a new bank account, and moved into a furnished one-bedroom in the South Lamar district. It was nothing fancy, but it had light, quiet neighbors and a little balcony where I could drink coffee in peace. Mark didn't call, didn't ask where I went, didn't check in once, and I didn't expect him to. What I didn't expect either was what I would find 2 weeks later when I stopped by the house to pick up a box of old tax documents. The door was unlocked. I stepped inside, said a polite hello, and went straight for the home office. Mark wasn't there, just the faint smell of instant noodles and the stale quiet of a man living alone for the first time in years. As I reached for the filing cabinet, I noticed his laptop was still open on the desk. It wasn't snooping. At least, not at first. But then I saw my name. On the screen was an email confirmation. Loan approval, $125,000. Guarantor, Diana Brooks. I froze. My name, my information. No consent. And just like that, the entire amicable separation unraveled. Before my eyes. Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I stared at the screen. My breath caught somewhere between fury and disbelief. There it was. My full name, address, partial social security number, attached to a loan I never applied, for $125,000, approved and active. My hand trembled as I clicked into the details. The funds had already been dispersed. The recipient? A business checking account registered under a limited liability company I didn't recognize. I backed away slowly, like the laptop might explode. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I lay awake in my new apartment, the ceiling fan spinning, slowly above me, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. The pieces began to fit together in the quiet. Mark's sudden push for separation, his insistence on splitting assets quickly and cleanly, the complete absence of emotion when he walked away from our marriage like he was stepping off a bus. He didn't want a fresh start. He wanted cover. He wanted me out of the picture so he could pull something shady without me noticing. What he didn't realize, what he seriously miscalculated, was how quickly I'd notice the smell of something rotten. I spent 2 decades auditing financial portfolios. I could smell hidden debt from a mile away. By morning, I was in full-blown research mode. I contacted my friend Julia, a cybersecurity consultant who owed me a favor from way back. Told her I needed help verifying where that loan was processed from, what IP address submitted it, what device, what browser. She didn't ask questions. 2 hours later, she texted, "Request was filed from your old house. Same day you were at your farewell party. Definitely not you." Next, I pulled up copies of my signature from our mortgage documents, car lease, and medical forms. Then I screenshot the one from the loan document. The differences were obvious even to the untrained eye. My loops were tighter, my slant leaned right, not left. This wasn't just betrayal. It was identity fraud. My husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, had used my name and forged my signature to secure a 6-figure loan. The next logical step would have been to confront him, storm into the house, slap the evidence on the table, and demand answers. But I didn't. Because I wasn't looking for an apology. I was preparing for a takedown, the kind he wouldn't see coming. I made a list of every financial account we'd ever shared. Savings, checking, investments, credit cards. I checked each for suspicious activity. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Over the past 8 months, Mark had been draining the joint investment account, bit by bit, always under the guise of house repairs or maintenance needs. But there were no new appliances, no new roof, just a string of withdrawals, marked authorized under both our names. My next call was to a lawyer. Her name was Natalie Diaz, smart, sharp, and exactly the kind of noble attorney I needed. After I showed her everything, she sat back, folded her hands, and said, "You're not just dealing with a divorce. You're dealing with financial misconduct within a marriage. We go after him. It's not just about splitting assets. It's about clearing your name and hitting him where it hurts most." I nodded. "Let's do it." We filed a formal request for full disclosure of financial activities, the loan, the forged signature, the questionable withdrawals, everything. Mark was served at home on a Tuesday. I wasn't there, but I imagined the look on his face, confused, smug, then slowly realizing I hadn't walked away to lick my wounds. I'd walked away to build a case. The next few days, he tried calling. I didn't answer. He sent a text. "Why are you blowing this up? We said we'd keep it clean." I stared at it for a while before replying, "You forged my signature. Nothing about this was clean." Then I blocked his number. A week later, Natalie received a response from his legal rep. Predictably, they tried to downplay everything. "Was a misunderstanding," they said. "A misfiled form. He thought he had her verbal consent." But they knew. They knew the signature didn't match. They knew the IP didn't lie. And more importantly, they knew I wasn't backing down. I spent the following days collecting every receipt, every email, every transaction I could dig up. I wasn't just proving he'd crossed a line. I was proving that line never existed, for him in the first place. It wasn't long before I uncovered something else. The business account that received the loan, it was registered under the name Evermark Concepts, an LLC managed by, wait for it, his younger brother, Caleb. Caleb, who had filed for bankruptcy twice, owed back taxes, and hadn't held a stable job since 2014. It hit me then. Mark didn't take out that loan for himself. He took it out for Caleb, and he used my name to do it. Everything started to crystallize. The The separation agreement, the rushed asset division, the silence afterward. He needed a clean exit, fast access to cash, and no one watching the books. He'd written me out of the script because I was the only one who could stop the show. But what he didn't know, what he never counted on, was that I'd already rewritten the ending. The morning of our first court appearance was gray and silent, the kind of sky that felt like it was holding its breath. I wore a navy suit, pressed and tailored, not to impress him, but to remind myself that I was no longer the woman who once kept silent for the sake of peace. I was there to protect my name, my future, and every inch of ground I had earned. Mark walked in with a different energy altogether. He looked thinner, pale. His suit was wrinkled like he'd pulled it out of a dry cleaning bag and never bothered with the steam. No smile, no wave. Just a stiff nod and eyes that darted around the room like he was looking for the exit. His lawyer opened with pleasantries. Mine opened with evidence. Natalie stood calmly, a single manila folder in her hands. She presented copies of the forged signature, documentation showing the loan submission came from the Brooks residence during a time I was at a farewell party with over 100 witnesses. She submitted expert handwriting analysis and bank transaction logs showing where the money had gone. Evermark Concepts, LLC, owned by Caleb Brooks, Mark's brother. Across the courtroom, Mark shifted uncomfortably. He rubbed the back of his neck, like the air itself had gotten heavier. Then Natalie delivered the final blow. We're also submitting a sworn affidavit from the bank loan officer, who confirms there was no in-person verification of Mrs. Brooks's identity. The loan was approved solely based on digital documentation that our client never saw, never signed, and never authorized. The judge raised an eyebrow. Mark's lawyer tried to object on grounds of marital asset presumption, but the judge wasn't having it. "This is no longer about a divorce," he said firmly. "This is about fraud." After court adjourned, Mark followed me out into the hallway. "Diana," he started, voice low, hands shoved into his pockets. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I stared at him, unsure if I felt more disgusted or indifferent. "You didn't mean to get caught," I corrected. "There's a difference." His eyes flickered with something that looked like shame, but not quite. It was softer, like regret's distant cousin, one that showed up too late to be useful. "You don't understand," he said. Caleb was drowning. He was going to lose everything. He begged me. I didn't know what else to do. I tilted my head, calm and even. "So you stole my name?" "I thought I could fix it before you found out," he admitted. "I thought, once the business turned around, we'd pay it back. No harm done." "No harm?" I said, my voice like glass under pressure. "You forged my name. You tied me to a loan I didn't approve. You set me up to take the fall if Caleb's sinking ship went under. That's not desperation. That's betrayal." He didn't respond, and I didn't wait for him to. I turned and walked away. Back at home, I sat on my couch and stared out the window. Something had shifted inside me. Not just anger, not just sadness, but a clean, quiet clarity. For so long, I'd carried the weight of our marriage like a second spine. I handled the bills, the holidays, the emotional glue. I thought that was love. I thought that was what you did when you cared. But now I saw it for what it was. Unpaid. Labor. Unmatched commitment. One-sided loyalty. And still, even with the truth out in the open, part of me kept wondering, why? Why didn't I see it sooner? Why did I stay quiet every time he brushed off my questions with a smirk or a shrug? When did I trade my instincts for comfort? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it didn't matter. What mattered now was that I wasn't that woman anymore. I had an attorney, a paper trail, and the truth on my side. And soon, I'd have a court order clearing my name and freezing every account tied to that fraudulent loan. In the days that followed, things moved quickly. Natalie filed a request to formally remove me from any financial liability related to the $125,000. We submitted proof that the loan funds had never touched my hands, never benefited me in any way. Simultaneously, we moved to dissolve the remaining joint accounts, every savings account, investment portfolio, and credit line that still had my name anywhere near it. And just when I thought Mark had run out of audacity, he surprised me again. One afternoon, I returned from a meeting with Natalie to find a letter slid under my apartment door. It wasn't typed. It wasn't official. It was a handwritten note, sloppy, rushed. Diana, I know you hate me. I deserve it. But if there's even the smallest part of you that remembers what we were, please don't take it all the way to court. Caleb is falling apart. I'm falling apart. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought we could fix it in time. If you walk away now, maybe we can just put this behind us. I read the letter twice. Then I set it down, and I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so painfully predictable. Even now, after everything, he still thought I'd back down. That I'd let the weight of our history override the facts. That I'd forget my worth in exchange for peace. But he was wrong. I had finally stopped negotiating with people who only understood boundaries after they'd been sued, and I had no intention of turning back. The final hearing took place on a crisp October morning. I walked into the courthouse with a leather folder in my hand, and not a single doubt in my step. My name was no longer just something I signed on birthday cards and contracts. It was something I had fought to protect, and today I was going to make sure it stayed mine. Mark was already seated when I entered the courtroom. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight of consequence had finally started to press into his shoulders. His lawyer whispered something to him, but he just stared straight ahead. Not at me, not at the judge, just forward, like he couldn't look back without unraveling. Natalie laid everything out with precision. Every transaction, every document, every forged signature and misused dollar. The evidence spoke louder than either of us ever needed to. The judge didn't waste time. In light of the submitted documentation and verified misconduct, he began, adjusting his glasses as he scanned the files. The court finds that Mrs. Brooks was not a consenting party to the loan in question, and therefore cannot be held financially responsible for its repayment. Mark's shoulders slumped. The court also acknowledges a breach of fiduciary duty within the marriage. As such, all remaining joint assets shall be reviewed, frozen, and subject to reallocation pending financial restitution. Furthermore, the court grants Mrs. Brooks full permission to proceed with divorce under grounds of fraud. That word echoed louder than expected. Fraud. It wasn't just a legal term. It was a name for everything I'd felt but couldn't say aloud for years. The lies, the manipulation, the way I'd been made to doubt my instincts until I stopped listening to them altogether. I didn't look at Mark as we left the courtroom. I didn't need to, because this story was never really about him. It was about me. 2 weeks later, I finalized the divorce. I moved into a new place across town. A corner apartment on the 3rd floor with windows that opened wide and let in the afternoon sun. No joint accounts, no hidden liabilities. Just my name on the lease, my signature on the bank account, my life finally mine again. I took the first deep breath I'd had in years and signed up for the photography course I'd always talked about. I bought a secondhand camera, the kind with weight and memory in its hands, and I started walking the city at dawn, capturing details I used to rush past, shadows on old bricks, coffee steam on cold mornings, life that had nothing to do with anyone else's expectations. One day I posted a photo, just a simple shot of the sun rising behind a rusted fire escape. I added a caption. Starting over isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It means you finally stopped pretending the storm wasn't real. The comments rolled in. Messages from other women, strangers, old friends, People who had felt silenced for years, now finding the words in a photo and a sentence. Some cried, some shared their own stories, some just said, "Thank you," and that's when it hit me. This wasn't the end of something. This was the start. I launched a podcast a few months later, called it The Second Signature, a nod to the one that tried to undo me and the one I'd learned to write for myself. Each week, I talked about recovery, boundaries, financial independence, the silent weight of emotional labor and the louder roar of reclaiming your own name. And people listened. Because they were tired too. Because they were done too. Because they were just waiting for someone to say, "You're not crazy. We're just being erased." Sometimes Mark still tries to reach out. An email here, a holiday text there. But I don't answer. Not because I hate him, but because I no longer explain myself to people who made a habit of not listening the first time. I look around my life now, and it's quieter. But it's real. No more double-checking the locks on my truth. No more sharing space with someone who made me feel like a liability instead of a partner. No more shrinking, just me, Diana Brooks, 45, divorced, free, and finally, whole.